On her 32nd birthday, her husband humiliated her in front of everyone by throwing her cake in her face. But that was the moment she finally chose herself and rebuilt her entire life. The sun was setting over Guadalajara, painting the sky orange as Valeria Lopez put the finishing touches on her makeup in front of the mirror. She had been dreaming about this night for weeks. Her 32nd birthday would be an elegant and unforgettable celebration, surrounded by her closest friends, and of course, her husband, Santiago. Dressed in a royal blue dress that flattered her figure, Valeria felt radiant as she looked at herself in the mirror for the last time. Her mother had always told her that elegance was not only in the clothes you wear, but in the attitude with which you carry yourself, and tonight, she would be the perfect example. The restaurant El Paraíso del Sabor had been chosen for the celebration, known for its sophisticated atmosphere, high ceilings, and crystal chandeliers. The place was ready to welcome Valeria's guests. A long table decorated with white flowers and scented candles awaited in the center of the room. A multi-tiered cake adorned with gold details and a sign that read, "Happy Birthday, Valeria," was the centerpiece. The guests began to arrive on time, including college classmates, work colleagues, and childhood friends. Each brought a carefully wrapped gift, an exclusive perfume, delicate jewelry, a designer handbag, and even a set of rare books that Valeria had mentioned on one occasion. Laughter filled the air as friends exchanged anecdotes and toasted the occasion. Santiago arrived with Valeria, greeting everyone with a smile that seemed as polished as his leather shoes. He was a lawyer and charismatic, someone who knew how to make a good impression, but Valeria felt that underlying tension in his gaze, a constant reminder of the cracks that had appeared in their marriage. The first toast of the night was for Valeria. Santiago stood up with his glass of wine in hand. "To my wife, the most beautiful and elegant woman I have ever known. May this year bring more success and happiness to her life," he said with a smile. Although the words were sweet, Valeria felt that they lacked the sincerity of times past. The menu consisted of carefully selected delicacies, beef carpaccio, and fig salad, followed by perfectly cooked steaks and fresh fish in herb sauce. Each dish was accompanied by exquisite wines chosen to enhance the flavors. The conversations flowed, and the toasts were repeated, filling the evening with a warm atmosphere. At one point, one of Valeria's friends handed her a golden envelope with a voucher for a luxury spa experience. "We know how hard you work, Valeria. You deserve a break," said her friend with a smile. Valeria thanked her emotionally, thinking about how special it was to feel valued by her friends. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. Valeria looked around her. "How hard you work, Valeria. You deserve a break," said her friend with a smile. Valeria thanked her, touched by how special it was to feel appreciated by her friends. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. Valeria looked around, and for a moment felt that the effort of planning this evening had been worth it. The admiring glances of her guests and their shared laughter seemed to momentarily erase the doubts and problems that she and Santiago were in private. However, as the cake was placed on the table and the waiters began to serve coffee, a shadow seemed to fall over the evening. Santiago, sitting next to Valeria, did not seem to share the joy of the others. His expression had hardened, and although no one noticed, she could feel the storm brewing. Valeria's birthday was about to take a turn that none of those present would ever forget. The atmosphere in the restaurant remained warm and vibrant as Valeria's guests laughed and shared stories. The cake, a masterpiece of pastry with golden details and a touch of fresh red berries, stole everyone's attention. The waiters diligently approached each diner, serving perfectly cut slices while hot coffee filled the cups. Amidst the laughter, Santiago remained expressionless, his face rigid like a mask. Valeria, accustomed to hiding the tensions in their relationship, smiled shyly, and tried to lighten the mood. "Everything okay?" Santiago asked quietly, leaning toward her. He nodded without looking at her, but his eyes exuded barely contained anger. Finally, he uttered the words that lit the fuse. "And how do you plan to pay for all this, Valeria?" The comment was direct, shattering the harmony of the celebration. Valeria blinked in disbelief, feeling the guest's eyes begin to turn toward them. "Santiago, please, let's talk about this later." He tried to remain calm, his voice barely a whisper. "Let's not talk about it now. It's your party. Not everyone needs to know how much you love to spend money you don't have." His voice rose slightly, enough for the nearby tables to begin to hear him. Valeria's face flushed with embarrassment. She felt the ground beneath her feet disappear as she tried to calm the situation. "This isn't the time or place." "Of course it is, because it seems like you think the whole world revolves around you. Look at all this. The cake, the flowers, the expensive wine, and you didn't even think to ask me if I could pay for it." The entire room fell silent. The knives and forks stopped clattering. The laughter died down, replaced by an uncomfortable murmur. "Santiago, stop," Valeria whispered, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. But he didn't stop. He stood up from the table, pointing around him with a theatrical gesture. "All this is ridiculous. Your life is ridiculous. You pretend to be this perfect woman when you can't even handle your own problems. You know what? I'm sick of it." Before Valeria could react, Santiago took a piece of cake, still wet with cream and chocolate, and threw it directly at his wife's face. The thud echoed through the living room, followed by a muffled scream from one of Valeria's friends. She stood frozen, feeling the sticky mixture of cream and shame sliding down her face. Tears immediately sprang to her eyes, but not because of the physical pain, but because of the unbearable humiliation. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the marble floor that seemed to mock her misfortune by reflecting the lights in the room. "That's what you deserve," Santiago said with a bitter smile before sitting down again as if nothing had happened. One of the friends tried to intervene. "Santiago, that was too much. Don't get involved. No one here understands what it's like to live with someone like her. It's always the same." Valeria, still trembling, took a napkin to wipe her face with her shaking hands. She removed the remains of the cake while the rest of the guests looked on, too stunned to move. The silence was oppressive. Then she slowly stood up with a dignity that seemed impossible at that moment. Valeria removed her wedding ring and placed it on the table in front of Santiago. "You will never humiliate me again," she said, in a broken but determined voice. Without looking back, she walked toward the exit, leaving behind not only the ruined celebration, but also a marriage that had slowly destroyed her over the years. The room remained completely silent, except for Valeria's footsteps, which echoed loudly, marking the beginning of a change that she herself did not yet fully understand. The cool night breeze hit Valeria's face as she hurriedly left the restaurant. Her heels echoed against the tiles of the sidewalk, but she did not feel the cold or the pain in her feet. All she could hear was the echo of Santiago's words and the uncomfortable laughter that had followed her humiliation. When she reached the car, she stopped, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Silent tears ran down her face, mixing with the remains of the cake that still clung to her hair and the folds of her dress. She searched for her keys in her purse with trembling hands, but dropped them. "Valeria," a soft voice called to her from behind. It was Gabriella, her friend from college, and one of the few people who hadn't frozen inside the restaurant. "Are you okay? Do you want me to take you home?" Valeria couldn't answer right away. The words seemed stuck in her throat, as if she didn't even have the strength to speak. Gabriella took a step forward, gently taking her hand. "Don't worry about what happened in there. Santiago doesn't deserve someone like you." That was enough to break the dam of emotions Valeria had been holding back. She collapsed into Gabriella's arms, crying uncontrollably. "How did I get to this, Gabby? How did I let him treat me like that for so long?" she asked between sobs. Gabriella, still hugging her, tried to comfort her. "Because you believed in him. Because you thought he was going to change." "But Valeria, what happened tonight was unforgivable. It's time for you to choose yourself." Valeria nodded weakly. Her friend's words echoed in her mind, but they also filled her with fear. The idea of leaving Santiago meant facing a life she no longer recognized. She had met him. He had molded her existence, from the friendships she was allowed to have to the decisions they made as a couple. Gabriella insisted on taking her home. During the ride, Valeria remained silent, looking out the window as the city passed by like a blur of lights. Memories of her relationship with Santiago began to invade her mind. The first years full of promises and romantic gestures, followed by a gradual but devastating change, questioning her way of dressing or speaking, followed by open criticism and emotional manipulation that slowly eroded her self-esteem. When they arrived at her apartment, Valeria thanked Gabriella and went up alone. Closing the door behind her, loneliness enveloped her like a heavy blanket. She took off her shoes, feeling her feet touch the cold floor, and walked to the mirror in the hall. Her reflection was devastating. Her makeup had run, her hair was messy, and the dress that once made her feel beautiful was now ruined and stained. However, as she stared at herself, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a spark of determination. "This ends here," she whispered to herself. She went to her room, grabbed a suitcase, and began to fill it with the essentials: clothes, important documents, and some photographs that reminded her of who she was before Santiago. She didn't know exactly where she would go, but she knew she couldn't stay. As she packed, a mixture of fear and relief washed over her. It wouldn't be easy to face the expectations of her family and the social norms that had raised her to be the perfect wife. But she knew she had no other choice if she wanted to get her life back. Just as she finished closing the suitcase, her phone vibrated. It was a message from Santiago. "Valeria, I know I overreacted, but you were also to blame. We need to talk." She stared at the screen for a few seconds before turning off her phone and putting it in a drawer. That night, for the first time in a long time, she made a decision that was dictated by no one but herself. She sat on the edge of the bed, breathing deeply, and for the first time, she began to imagine a future without him. Before continuing, we want to know more about you. Where are you watching us from? Leave us a comment with the name of your city or country. We would love to know and meet. Where do these stories come from? The next morning arrived with an air of uncertainty. Valeria woke up early, surrounded by the chaos of a half-open suitcase, scattered clothes, and a silence that seemed denser than ever. She sat on the bed for a moment, mentally reviewing the latest events, as if she were still trying to process the magnitude of her decision. The apartment she shared with Santiago was spacious, decorated in a minimalist style that he had imposed, although she had added personal touches such as plants and framed photographs. Now everything around her seemed foreign. She had lived there for 5 years, but she realized that she had never felt at home. She knew she couldn't stay any longer. Every corner of the place was imbued with memories that weighed heavily on her, from the initial laughter to the screams and icy silences that had marked the last few months. Valeria picked up her suitcase and walked out the door without looking back. In the elevator, she mentally reviewed her options. Her family lived in a luxurious neighborhood in Guadalajara, but returning to them meant facing uncomfortable questions and, above all, judgments. Since she was a child, Valeria had been raised to be the exemplary daughter, someone who reflected the prestige of the Lopez, one of the most influential families in the city. Marrying Santiago had been considered a social triumph, a perfect alliance between two powerful names. Now, Returning alone meant admitting that her marriage had been a failure. Despite the weight of those expectations, she decided to go to her older sister Camila's house. Camila had always been a refuge in the most difficult moments. After a few minutes' walk, she arrived in front of Camila's elegant house, surrounded by a perfectly manicured garden. She nervously rang the doorbell, adjusting her coat as if that could hide the traces of the previous night's disaster. Camila opened the door, and upon seeing Valeria, her expression changed from surprise to concern in an instant. "Valeria, what happened?" she asked, as she invited her in without hesitation. Valeria left her suitcase by the door and sank into the sofa, unable to hold back her tears any longer. "It's over, Camila. I can't go on with Santiago. It was the last straw." Camila listened attentively without interrupting as Valeria recounted the details of the humiliation in the restaurant. When she finished, silence filled the room for a few seconds. Camila sighed and took her sister's hands. She knew something was wrong, but she never imagined it would come to this. "I'm so sorry, Valeria. No one deserves to go through something like this. Everyone will think I'm a failure. Camila, the perfect Valeria Lopez, unable to maintain her marriage. What will Mom and Dad say?" "Let them talk. They've lived a life of appearances their whole lives. But you don't have to do that. This is for you, Valeria. It's time to choose yourself, not others." Those words resonated deeply with Valeria. She had sacrificed her dreams and happiness for years, but she didn't have to do that anymore. This is for you, Valeria. It's time to choose yourself, not others. Those words resonated deeply with Valeria. For years, she had sacrificed her dreams and happiness to meet the expectations of her family and Santiago. But now, in front of her sister, she was beginning to realize that maybe it was time to break those chains. Camila convinced her to stay at her house for a few days while she organized her thoughts and decide what to do during that time. Valeria stayed away from social media and her social circle. She didn't want to face questions or hypocritical messages from people who barely knew her, but who were surely already talking about the incident at the restaurant. One afternoon, while she was alone in the living room, she looked through an old box that Camila had lent her to store some things. Among the objects, she found a sketchbook she had used during her years as an architecture student. When she opened it, she saw drawings and plans that had been forgotten for years. Each stroke reminded her of the passion she once felt for designing spaces, and how that dream had been crushed by the priorities of Santiago and his family. Something inside her awakened. She didn't know how, but she decided she wanted to recover that part of herself, even if it meant starting from scratch. And if you love following stories of women who decide to start over and rebuild their lives from scratch, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. "Camila, I want to move to Mexico City," she said that night during dinner. Camila put her fork down on the table and looked at her. "Are you sure? It's a big change." "Valeria, I'm sure. I need a fresh start, far away from here and everything that reminds me of Santiago. I want to resume my career, even if it's difficult." Camila smiled proudly. "Then do it. I'll support you in everything you need." That night, Valeria began looking for small, affordable apartments in Mexico City. Although the road ahead would be uncertain, for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was taking control of her life. A few days later, Valeria arrived in Mexico City with a suitcase in hand and a mixture of emotions. The urban landscape with its skyscrapers, busy avenues, and constant bustle of people was intimidating, but it also promised new opportunities. She had found a small apartment in Colonia, Roma, a modest but cozy space that represented a new beginning far from the luxuries and pressures of her old life. She spent her first day settling in. While unpacking, she placed a photo of her family on a shelf and kept her sketchbooks in a visible place. She wanted to constantly remember the reason for her move, to rediscover herself and pursue the dreams she had abandoned. However, reality soon hit her. Although she had studied architecture and had experience, she had been out of the professional field for years, and finding work would not be easy. After spending hours reviewing offers online, she realized that the competition was fierce and that many companies were looking for up-to-date profiles. "I have to start from scratch, even if it's from the most basic level," she told herself as she updated her resume. The next day, she dressed in professional attire and went out to explore the city with a folder of documents. She visited architecture firms and left her resume in several places, but in most of them she received vague responses. "Thanks for coming, but we're not hiring at the moment." Although each rejection made her feel a little more discouraged, she refused to give up. At the end of the week, she got an interview at a small but promising firm. During the meeting, she spoke enthusiastically about her passion for architecture and her desire to learn, although she acknowledged that she had not worked in the field for some time. The interviewer, a man named Diego, looked at her with curiosity. "Your profile is interesting, Valeria. I'm not going to lie to you. Your lack of recent experience is a challenge, but I see potential in you. We're going to give you an opportunity starting as a design assistant. If you prove you can handle the job, we could consider something more stable." Although it wasn't the position she had hoped for, Valeria gratefully accepted the opportunity. It was a first step toward her independence. The first few days at the office were difficult. Her colleagues were nice, but Valeria felt insecure and out of place. The design tools and programs had advanced, and she struggled to keep up with the pace of work. There were moments when she wanted to quit, but every time she was about to give up, she remembered the humiliation she had suffered in the restaurant, and how she had sworn never to be a victim of circumstances again. One night, while working late on a project, Diego approached her desk. "Are you still here? Most people have already left. I want to make sure the design is ready for tomorrow's presentation. I know I'm still catching up, but I want to prove that I can do this." Diego smiled. "That kind of attitude is what makes the difference, Valeria. But remember, you don't have to do everything alone. If you need help, ask for it. You're not here to fight alone." Those words comforted her more than she expected. For years, she had been afraid to speak up. Kind of attitude is what makes the difference, Valeria. But remember, you don't have to do everything alone. If you need help, ask for it. You're not here to fight alone. Those words comforted her more than she expected. For years, she had dealt with her problems alone, isolating herself even from those who wanted to support her. Now she understood that accepting help was not a sign of weakness, but a way to move forward. Over time, Valeria began to adapt to her new environment. Her designs improved, and she soon received praise from her colleagues and superiors. She also began to explore the city, visiting museums, parks, and local cafes. Every corner of Mexico City made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. If you're happy to see Valeria slowly come back to life, hit the like button. It helps this story reach more people who need a bit of hope. One afternoon, while having coffee at a small cafe in Coyoacán, she saw a woman handing out flyers. It was for an organization that helped women in situations of abuse and emotional violence. Valeria was drawn to the idea and decided to attend one of their meetings. That decision would mark the beginning of a new stage in her life, one in which she would not only seek to rebuild herself, but also help other women find their way to freedom. The venue where the Nueva Luz organization held its meetings was modest, with walls decorated with motivational posters and photographs of smiling women. Upon entering, Valeria felt a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. She was not used to sharing her personal experiences with strangers, but something about the energy of the place invited her to stay. The meeting began with a circle activity. Each woman briefly introduced herself and shared something about her story. There were women of all ages and backgrounds, but they all seemed filled with courage. Valeria waited her turn while listening to the others, feeling the words of these strangers resonate deep within her. When her turn came, she took a deep breath. Hi, I'm Valeria, and just a few weeks ago I left a marriage that was destroying me. I'm still learning to process it, but being here is already a big step for me. The group welcomed her with words of support and warm smiles. No one judged her. No one questioned her decisions. For the first time, Valeria felt she was in a space where she could be vulnerable without fear. At the end of the meeting, she approached one of the coordinators, a woman named Laura, who had been working with the organization for several years. Valeria. Thank you for coming. How did you feel? It was different from anything I've experienced before. Hearing other women talk about their experiences made me feel less alone. And if you've ever gone through something similar or know someone who has, share it in the comments. Your words might make another woman feel less alone, too. Laura nodded sympathetically. That's the first step, realizing that you're not alone. Here, we not only share stories, we also work together to build new lives. If you're interested, you could get more involved. Sometimes helping other women also helps us heal. Valeria decided to take that invitation as a personal challenge. She started attending meetings regularly to the meetings, and soon began volunteering. At first, her tasks were simple: organizing documents, preparing materials, and helping with activities. But over time, her participation became more active. One afternoon, while organizing brochures in the office, Laura approached her. Valeria, I've noticed that you have a good eye for detail. Did you know that we are looking for a designer to renovate this space, something that is welcoming and functional for our users? Would you be interested in doing it? Valeria's heart skipped a beat. Not only would it be an opportunity to apply her skills in architecture, but also a way to give back to the community that was giving her so much. I'd love to. It would be an honor. Over the following weeks, Valeria devoted herself to redesigning the Nueva Luz premises. She consulted with the women in the group to understand what they wanted in the space, incorporating warm colors, soft lighting, and comfortable areas for meetings. On opening day, when she saw the result, tears filled her eyes. The place had gone from being a cold, functional space to a refuge full of life and hope. The women applauded and hugged Valeria, thanking her for her efforts. It was at that moment that she realized something crucial. She had found her purpose. I want to do more than this. I want to help transform lives as you have transformed mine. Laura, moved by the passion in Valeria's words, replied, Then stay with us, Valeria, not just as a volunteer, but as part of the team. Women like you inspire others. That night, Valeria allowed herself to smile genuinely for the first time in a long time. She had come to Mexico City looking for a new beginning, and now she knew she was building something much bigger, a life with purpose based on freedom, resilience, and mutual support. Valeria's days at Nueva Luz began to fill with meaning. In addition to collaborating on community projects, she dedicated herself to teaching workshops for women seeking to regain their self-esteem and autonomy. During each session, she shared fragments of her story, turning her experience into a tool to inspire others. In one of those workshops, she met a woman named Beatrice, who had been attending the group for only 2 weeks. Beatrice spoke little, but her gaze reflected a mixture of fear and despair. At the end of the session, Valeria approached her. Beatrice, I know it's hard to talk at first, but I want you to know that everyone here understands you. You're not alone. Beatrice hesitated, but finally replied in a low voice, Sometimes I think it's my fault. Maybe if I were more patient, he wouldn't get so angry. Beatrice's words struck Valeria like an echo of her own past. She knelt in front of her and took her hands. I thought that too once, Beatrice, but it's not your fault. No one has the right to hurt you or humiliate you. You are valuable, even if you don't see it now. Beatrice looked at her with teary eyes, and for the first time, gave a faint smile. Valeria felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Every step she took to help these women was a step toward her own healing. One afternoon, while working in her office reviewing proposals for new projects, her phone vibrated. The name that appeared on the screen made her heart stop for a moment. Santiago. It had been months since she left Guadalajara, and although she hoped that at some point he would try to contact her, she was not prepared to face him. She hesitated before answering, but finally decided to pick up. "What do you want, Santiago?" she asked in a firm voice, surprised by the confidence she projected. There was a brief silence before he spoke. "Valeria, I wanted to know how you are. I've been thinking a lot about everything. I think I made mistakes. Maybe we could talk and fix things." His tone was softer than she remembered, but Valeria knew enough not to fall for false hopes. She took a deep breath before answering. "I'm fine, Santiago, but there's nothing to fix. What happened between us wasn't a mistake. It was a series of decisions you made that broke me little by little. I rebuilt myself on my own, and I don't plan on going back. I hope you find peace, but I don't need you in my life anymore." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Santiago muttered something inaudible and hung up. Valeria left the phone on the table and allowed herself a few minutes to process the conversation. Instead of feeling upset, she experienced a sense of relief. She had faced her fear and reaffirmed her decision to move on. That night, during dinner with Laura and other colleagues from Nueva Luz, Valeria shared what had happened. "Santiago called me. He wanted to talk, but I rejected him. For years I believed I couldn't live without him, but now I know that's not true. I'm stronger than ever." Laura looked at her with a proud smile, of pride. That is the power of a woman who rebuilds herself. Not only Valeria, but also inspires others. Laura's words resonated with Valeria. She had come to Mexico City looking for a new beginning, and not only had she found her purpose, but also her strength. Santiago was not a shadow in her life, but a lesson she had overcome. The most ambitious project Nueva Luz had ever undertaken was about to begin. The creation of a comprehensive center for women seeking not only emotional, but also practical support. The center would include job training workshops, psychological care, and recreational areas for the participants' children. For Valeria, this project represented much more than a physical space. It was a tangible manifestation of everything she had learned and overcome. Laura, the director of the organization, gathered the team to discuss the final details. "This is an important step for us, and I want Valeria to lead the coordination of the design and implementation of the project. Her vision and commitment have been key to getting us this far." The recognition surprised Valeria, but it also filled her with pride. "Thank you, Laura. It's an honor. I promise to do my best." She knew that the challenge would be enormous. Overseeing the design and construction of the center would require not only technical skills, but also managing budgets, negotiating with suppliers, and above all, maintaining the essence of Nueva Luz in every corner of the space. Over the following months, Valeria worked tirelessly, designing plans, selecting materials, and collaborating closely with the construction team. Every decision she made was guided by the purpose of creating a place where women would feel safe, valued, and empowered. One day, while supervising the progress of the work, she received an unexpected call from an important client of the architecture firm where she worked. "Valeria, we have seen your work at Nueva Luz, and we are impressed. We would like you to lead a renovation project for one of our buildings in the city center." The offer was tempting, but it also meant increasing her workload. Valeria hesitated, but when she shared the news with Laura that night, she received the advice she needed. "Valeria, accepting that offer doesn't mean you'll neglect this project. It means you're growing, that your work is being recognized beyond what you imagined. Sometimes personal success also strengthens the causes we defend." That perspective encouraged Valeria to accept the new challenge. During the following days, she balanced both responsibilities with determination, working long hours and organizing her time down to the minute. Although exhaustion was inevitable, she felt a deep satisfaction in seeing how each step brought her closer to her goals. The day of the opening of the comprehensive center arrived with a mixture of nerves and excitement. The place had been completely transformed. Walls painted in bright colors, areas filled with natural light, and furniture designed for comfort and functionality. The women who attended Nueva Luz began to arrive, many with their children, and their expressions of amazement said it all. Beatrice, who had now left behind the abusive relationship that had brought her to the group, approached Valeria. "This place is incredible. It's more than I ever imagined. Thank you for making this possible." Valeria smiled excitedly. "You made it possible too, Beatrice. We all did. This place is for you, so that you never have to feel alone again." When Laura spoke during the opening event, she couldn't help but highlight Valeria's contribution. A year ago, Valeria came to this place looking for support. Today, she is one of the reasons we are opening this center. Her strength and dedication have shown us that when a woman decides to rebuild, she can achieve anything. Applause filled the room, but what moved Valeria the most was seeing the faces of the women and children who would begin to write a new story in that space. That night, when she got home, Valeria sat by the window of her small apartment, looking at the lights of the city. Her phone vibrated with a message from Camila. "Dad is asking about you. He says he wants to see you. I think he finally understands that you won't be going back to Santiago, and he wants to know how you are." Valeria looked at the message for a few seconds before replying, "Tell him I'm fine, Camila. He can come whenever he wants, but this time it will be to meet the real me." Valeria put her phone away and took a deep breath. The Valeria who had arrived in Mexico City looking for answers was very different from the woman she was now. She no longer sought the approval of others or feared facing her past. Her mind was at peace with herself. A few weeks after the opening of the comprehensive center, Valeria received an unexpected call. It was Camila. "Dad and Mom want to see you, Valeria. They're worried. They've heard about your work at the organization and are impressed, but they also think enough time has passed since what happened with Santiago. They say you should consider reconciling with him." Valeria's heart tightened when she heard those words. Although she wasn't surprised that her parents were trying to influence her decisions, it hurt her that after everything she had been through, they still didn't understand the damage Santiago had done to her. "Camila, I know you're saying this because you think it's best for me, but that's not going to happen. I don't need you to understand my decision. I just need you to respect it." Camila sighed on the other end of the line. "I know, Valeria, but you know how they are. They've always valued appearances over happiness. Maybe you could come home and explain it to them yourself. I think if they hear you out, they might understand you better." Valeria hesitated for a moment, but finally agreed. If she was going to face her family, she would do so with the same strength and conviction she had built up since leaving Guadalajara a few days later. Valeria showed up at her parents' house, a place she had not visited since her separation. The entrance, with its imposing wooden door and perfectly manicured garden, was a symbol of the rigidity and perfection they had always demanded of her. Upon entering, her parents greeted her with a mixture of warmth and tension. Her mother, an elegant woman with a firm demeanor, was the first to speak. "Valeria, dear, you look well. We are happy to see you after so long." Her father, a man of few words but with a dominant presence, nodded as he invited her to sit in the living room. Valeria accepted. Although she could feel the weight of their eyes evaluating her, she had heard a lot about her work in Mexico City. "It seems you are doing something important, and that makes us proud. But we have also heard that you are still alone," her mother began in a tone laden with insinuation. "Yes, Mom, I am alone. But I don't feel that way. I have built a life that fulfills me. Something I never had in my marriage," her father interjected, adjusting his glasses. Santiago made mistakes, no one denies that, but enough time has passed. Valeria, people change, and maybe this separation was what they needed to fix things. It's not easy to find someone like him with stability and such a solid career. Valeria felt frustration beginning to build up in her chest. She looked her parents straight in the eye, determined not to let their words divert her from her path. "Dad, Mom, I'm not going back to Santiago. Not now. Not ever. He didn't make a simple mistake. He humiliated me, destroyed me emotionally, and made me feel worthless. It took me years to regain my confidence, and I'm not going to risk losing it again." Her mother tried to soften her tone. "We understand how difficult it was, daughter. But we also believe in second chances. Santiago is a good man. Maybe with time." Valeria interrupted her with a firm, "But don't worry, he's not a good man. And even if he were, I'm not interested. I will never again allow a man or anyone else to treat me like a disposable object. I've learned to value myself, and that's something I will never compromise on again." The silence that followed was tense. Her father looked at the floor, clearly uncomfortable, while her mother seemed to be searching for the right words. Finally, Camila intervened. "Mom, Dad, listen to her. Valeria is fine, more than fine. Can't you see that she's happier and more confident than ever? She doesn't need Santiago or anyone else. Let her be who she is now." Valeria looked at her sister with gratitude. Finally, her mother sighed. "We only want what's best for you, Valeria. If you're sure this is your decision, we'll respect it." "Thank you, Mom, but what's best for me is no longer something others can decide. I've learned to trust my own voice." As she left her parents' house, Valeria felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. She had faced one of the most difficult tests since leaving Santiago, standing up to those who had most influenced her throughout her life. As she walked to her car, Camila caught up with her. "I'm proud of you, Valeria. I always knew you had incredible strength, but now everyone can see it." Valeria smiled and hugged her sister. "Thank you, Camila, for always supporting me, even when it wasn't easy." That night, as she returned to her apartment, Valeria allowed herself a quiet smile. There were no more doubts in her mind. She had left behind the weight of expectations, humiliation, and fear. Now she lived a life that was completely her own, and she would not change that for anything or anyone. As the months passed, Valeria's life reached a stability that she would have considered impossible years ago. Not only did her work at Nueva Luz consolidate, but the organization grew. Under her leadership, every new project, every woman she met at the center reinforced her conviction that she had made the right decisions. The impact of the comprehensive center attracted the attention of local and even some international media. Valeria was invited to participate in forums and conferences where she shared her story and spoke about the importance of empowering women. Although she was initially uncomfortable being in the spotlight, she learned to use her voice to inspire others. One day, while reviewing the program for an upcoming event, she received an unexpected call from Laura. "Valeria, we have an interesting offer. A publisher is interested in publishing a book about our organization, and they believe you should write it. Your story and your work are the heart of everything we have built." Valeria was stunned. Although she had always dreamed of leaving a mark, she never imagined it would be through something as tangible as a book. "It's an honor, Laura, but are you sure I'm the right person?" "More than sure. No one better than you can convey what it means to rebuild yourself and help other women do the same." She accepted the proposal with some nervousness, but also with enthusiasm. She spent the following weeks writing, pouring every detail of her story onto the pages. The dark moments, the days of uncertainty in Mexico City, the support she found at Nueva Luz, and the purpose she discovered along the way. When the book was published, titled Renater, A Story of Strength and Hope, it quickly became a success. Women from all over the country began to write to her, sharing how her words had inspired them to seek help, leave abusive relationships, or simply believe in themselves again. One afternoon, she was walking through downtown Mexico City after an interview with a television station. She stopped at a nearby park, enjoying the sun and the bustle of the people as she watched a group of children playing. Her phone vibrated with a message. It was Camila. Mom and Dad wanted me to tell you something. They are proud of you. Dad even read your book. I think they finally understand you. Valeria felt a lump in her throat. Although her relationship with her parents would never be perfect, there was something liberating about knowing that they finally recognized her strength and her achievements. That night, back in her apartment, Valeria opened the windows and let the cool breeze fill the space. On her desk, next to her computer, was the original manuscript of her book, along with a photograph of the Nueva Luz team. There was also a small memento she had kept from her time with Santiago, a piece of the napkin she had used to wipe her face after the humiliation in the restaurant. She took it in her hands and looked at it carefully, not with sadness or resentment, but with gratitude. That moment, although painful, had been the beginning of her transformation. She approached the window and let the wind carry away the napkin away. Never again, she murmured to herself, a calm smile lighting up her face. Valeria had not only been reborn, but now lived a life that was completely her own, full of purpose, strength, and hope. If you are living in a controlled and manipulated environment, remember this: your value does not depend on what someone else thinks or says about you. No matter how much they have made you believe that you cannot get out of that situation. The truth is that within you, there is a force capable of transforming your life. You may feel afraid, face doubt, and think that there is no way out. But I promise you that there is. Manipulation and control are like invisible chains, but you can break them. Start by trusting yourself, by listening to that inner voice that tells you that you deserve better. Seek support. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, or an organization that can help you break out of that cycle. You are not alone. There are people willing to walk with you and lend you a hand when you feel you don't have the strength to leave an abusive environment. It's not easy, but every step you take toward your freedom will be a step toward a more fulfilling and authentic life. You deserve love, respect, and above all, peace. If you ever doubt your ability, remember this: every woman who has been reborn from a dark place started by making a decision. Today may be the day you decide to choose yourself. You have the right to be happy. You have the right to live without fear. Never let anyone dim your light. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to explore more content on our channel. We have many more exciting and thought-provoking stories like this one that seek to inspire you and show you that there is always hope.